myself for 5 minutes. Dr. Aines, in your prepared testimony, you highlight the need for the national labs and the private sector to work closely together to develop carbon capture, use, and storage technologies. And just as an aside, in Port Arthur, Texas, my district, we have probably the largest carbon capture sequestration unit in the country that I believe was funded by the ERA. Went to the ground breaking or the ribbon cutting probably 3 or 4 years ago, I guess it was. However, I want to point out it's the ultimate responsibility on industry, of industry to commercially deploy these technologies. So, in your opinion, when is the appropriate time for the fossil energy industry to take innovations from that lab to commercialization? And before you answer, do you have like a pipeline of information and research you're talking with industry consistently so that you're able to keep them up to date and then sufficiently or successfully hand that off to them? How do you do that?
We do it best when we work in partnership early on, which is why I mentioned this roundtable that we had where we brought industry in to ask them what they wanted to do. And we will be partnering with several of those companies to develop technologies. The concept of us developing and throwing it over the fence, as we call it, does not work well. We need to understand exactly what industry needs and pass it off at the time that they're ready to take it.
Right, and that's why I say that's why I say a pipeline of information. You want to keep them involved and keep them working. And I guess you work with some of the associations around that also are very attentive to this process, and they would be able to keep, their members involved, so that when we do get to that where it's economically feasible, viable, then you can hand that off. You have those relationships established.
Yes, sir. We try to develop those, but I have to say that is a major challenge to maintain those relationships because we need things to work on together to actually have a relationship. No, I got you.
What tools do the national labs and the nonprofit research institutions have in their toolkit, that make y'all better suited to conduct that early stage research in support of the innovative technology? How would you describe that toolbox?
We have a broad base of science and technology that we can use to look at the whole system. Rather than being an advocate for one particular technology, we like to say, what's the problem that needs to be solved? And then, somebody of the 7,000 scientists who work at my laboratory is likely to have a solution. If not, then one of the 17 other national laboratories. So it's important not to be just out there pushing a solution because we have one, but to work on the solutions that are required.
Right, and one of those tools we would hope, going back to my previous question, would be that you have robust relationships with industry, maintain those relationships and keep them interested. So that's a good thing. Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, LLNL, what do y'all call it?
We call it Lawrence Livermore.
Maybe we should call it L's in L. Get you a new mantra, all's well and L's in L. And so a shorter name would be good. But y'all have supercomputers and tools like carbon capture simulation, innovative tool set, which provides end users in the energy industry with computational modeling tools for the development of carbon capture technologies. So how does L's in L, as I call it, make sure that academic or energy sector partners can access this research infrastructure and the technical assistance the lab can provide? How do you do that, and how often do they access it?
We have a mechanism called the CRADA, Cooperative Research and Development Agreement, which we use when working with industry, and we do those commonly. They are a little complicated to put together sometimes. The second thing that we do that is a new program that has been very effective is called HPC for Energy. That stands for High Performance Computing for Energy, and that's a program where the Department of Energy pays the staff at one of the national labs that has expertise to work with an industry problem. The industry compete to get their problems worked on, and then we partner to bring the correct expertise to that industry, and that's been an extremely effective way to bring our high-performance computing expertise to the use of industry.
Do you find industry from all across the country, or is it more sectionalized, if you will?
Oh, all across the country. It's a very competitive program.
Does the fact that y'all you're a nuclear weapons lab, does that hamper or help in that program?
I would say it's not a factor.
Not a factor? Okay. Well, I appreciate that. I'm going to yield back, and the chairman recognizes Mr. Mark Beesey.
Mr.